opening the meeting of the Water Planning Committee for August 16th. And if you will please rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we can do a roll call, starting on my left.
Dee Bush,
Jim McLeod, Chair.
Kathy McDonald,
Kevin Pratt.
And
Ketty Waterfall.
so that's the title is Water Foreman, not Water Manager. I've heard.
Water Foreman.
All right. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Sure.
So what I'll do is we'll try and rearrange things a little bit so that we can ask you some questions, and then
Sure.
you don't have to stay for the minutes and other stuff if you want.
Nope,
if you want
that's
to.
fine.
And aside from our meeting, I noticed that the gate was open to the Bedrock well.
Right. I've talked to Todd before that sometimes like the coaches that go to use the field down below, sometimes they have a key to that gate.
I see.
So they're supposed to lock that when they're done. But I don't know if no one has told me if they got games or if they're practicing or whatever.
So I've never seen it open before.
Yeah,
That's why I was
generally
asking.
it's locked. Yeah.
So I did drive down. There's nobody down there, but I drove down there around the building
Right.
and back up. So that was the first
Yeah.
time I've actually seen well number 4.
Right.
Public comment. We don't have any public here today,
Right.
but is there anything that you would like to?
Yeah, if it's okay if I speak on behalf of the water division
Mhm.
or whatnot.
Absolutely.
So, from the last selectmen's meeting, I know we've agreed at this point that we're gonna go with the rehabilitation with the Route 156 water tower. So I just wanted to let you know that, at, June 11th, I wrote a letter to Peter. Peter is aware of it, and I'm gonna forward it to you as well. I just, running the system as I have been, it's my feeling, and I totally understand that the town, cost-wise, has to go towards the rehabilitation, but, my feeling is that, I think we should have a new tower in the end, but right now, it's probably not feasible. But I have that letter that I'm gonna forward to you, so you have it on file. And my biggest concern is when they take Orchard Street offline, from the calculations I have, that tower holds probably, it's good for 112,000 gallons, but realistically, it probably has 85,000-90,000 gallons of water in it, because it's been throttled since it was probably early 90s. They actually had issues with Orchard Street overfilling, because it doesn't have an altitude valve in it. So what they did was they throttled it down so the water would go right to 156. So that's where my number comes from.
So, question for you on that.
Yeah.
Is Weston and Sampson and Underwood aware that because they're using 119,000 in their calculations?
Right. Like I said, mine is speculation, because I just go by, when I go up there, you could see like a sweat line on the tower. So that's just kind of gauging it.
I think we should weigh your speculation very heavily, so.
Right, no, I
don't-
understand.
Yeah. so-
And I'm not saying that I'm correct, I could be wrong, I'm just saying my guess is because where the sweat line
Yeah,
on
I
it was.
presume that you're
kind of-
correct, so,
So to back up, what I was saying before is, once Orchard Street is taken offline, you're gonna come up short that 90,000 in that range, wherever it's gonna be. So in the past, we've had droughts. We haven't had them this year at all, but when we did have them, when the system was running 100%, you know, we had days where what we have now, that the water system would, on the SCADA system, would basically flatline, and then at night, the towers would climb. But during the day, everybody's using the water, it wouldn't, it would just hold its own. So I am concerned about, once Orchard Street is offline, how that's gonna change our equation.
So, we have discussed this before.
Yep.
I'm a 3-tank guy too.
Yeah,
So,
right.
having a primary, secondary, and tertiary tank gives us the ability to do maintenance on one tank, or if
Exactly.
there's an emergency on one tank, we're
Correct.
not immediately in an emergency situation, because
Sure.
we've got 2 other tanks to pick up the slack.
Correct.
And so that's definitely, it needs to be part of any plan that we have. But I think it's, the way that I've been picturing it in my mind is that Orchard Street isn't gonna come down until we've decided on like a location and the type and size of the
Exactly.
3rd tank.
Right.
And coordinate that. DES needs to see something done with the Orchard Street tank in
Right.
our plan for them to,
Sure.
for us to get out of trouble.
Right.
But what I'm hoping is that if we develop phase 2,
Mhm.
on the other tank, in the meantime, by the time we get to when we have to take Orchard down, we can be like, hey, do you
Right.
mind if we keep it up for another year and a half while we get this
Right.
other tank built?
Right.
And,
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Approximately how long does it take to build a tank to replace the Orchard Street?
I would say honestly, I mean, if everything is ready to go, I think it's gonna take at least a year, maybe no more than a year, between the construction, the building, the testing, the painting or whatnot. I mean, I wouldn't think it would, this would be new for me as well. I've never had it, I've been dealing with what I've had all these years. So, but, I wanna say, I thought I saw something the other day, you said like 6 months, but I don't,
To build,
to.
and then you said the testing in the facility?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be filled, it's gonna be tested, it's gonna be, water quality tests, all that.
And to follow up on that, the rehabilitation was estimated, no, don't hold my feet to the
Sure.
fire, at like 3 to 4 months
Okay.
for rehabilitation once they get started.
Right.
So we have to have a plan in place when 156 is down, on what we're gonna do about that 606,000 gallons that's not gonna be available.
Right.
And I imagine that that's gonna be in the Weston and Sampson scope of work on how we're going to
Correct.
address that.
Right.
Do you know if Peter has signed that scope of work? I know that he was gonna request it, and he got the authority from the Board of Selectmen to move
Okay.
forward with it, but do you know if he signed it or not?
I don't know for certain, but if you shoot us
Yeah,
an email.
I'll follow up.
We could follow up. And actually, you had sent Peter an email with some questions about, well 3, well 2,
Try-
stuff like that.
Trying to check a few things off our list.
Right, so what I've done is I've got, I was working on that probably most of the day, I've got 5 zip folders that I've put together that I'm gonna send to you so that you can review. It's got a lot of stuff. It's got
That's brilliant.
It's got the tower construction from 1957, so it's got a lot of information in there, and it answers some of your questions. And I actually talked to Underwood this morning, because they did well 1, so I was looking for some, like a cost analysis of the well 2, as far as, you know, doing a brand new well from scratch versus, you know, in our situation, what would happen was well 2 would go offline, and then to cut down on some of the permitting and some of the costs, as long as you're within 25 feet of the original well, you can drill another well next to it. So I think realistically, I think probably if we get the approvals to move forward with well two, which I would also recommend, that'll help us to alternate our sources. But we could probably do it cheap by just going next to the old well and drilling a new one.
So that actually has been a question that a lot of people have asked, is like, well, what's it gonna cost to repair well number 2? But
Right.
it's my understanding is that the screen is off kilter or something, and it's not really repairable.
Right, what it is, it's gone beyond repair at this point here. We had Barry Miller actually cleaned well 3 in the spring, and he's done multiple work on well 2 and repairs and stuff. So what it is the well itself is crooked, just where it was installed, I think in 1980, and the well is crooked, and it has a bronze screen at the bottom, which that has collapsed. So at this point here, it's not really feasible to repair it. So they would most likely just put a new well. Well 2 is only 60 feet deep, so when they do a new well, they would probably do similar to well 1, as they would go a little deeper with it. And you don't have to go through all the re-permitting and test wells, and you still have to go through a pump test and water quality and all that stuff, but you
Sure, but the permitting part is
Right.
already taken care of.
Correct.
So
So
that's,
just for like a cost analysis, I asked Underwood to, just so I can give it to you, give actual numbers, say if we're over here in the middle of nowhere putting in a well, what that would cost
With
between
new
monitoring
permitting,
wells,
right.
geological studies, all that, and then give me a cost of what it would be to replace well 2 in where it's at now. So hopefully, she said it would take a little bit, but she would get me those numbers, and then I'll forward them to you once I have them.
that's great. So that's not the highest priority that we're looking at
Correct.
right now, but that's
Correct.
definitely something that's on the near the top of the list.
Right, that was my concern that I put back to, from Steve Brewer to the previous directors. I wanted to make sure that we left that was still on the radar, because it's still a good, always was a good source.
Yeah, good spot.
And it was pretty clean water, considering.
So, right now, we've got gravel pack well 1, gravel pack well 3, and bedrock well 1
Correct.
going. So we have that tertiary thing going
You do, yeah.
with the wells, but we've only got 2 treatment facilities.
Right, I guess if you wanna, like the treatment plant at the site of Ferry property, that is actually I would call it a real treatment plant. It's actually filtering the water, where well 4 is, we're putting treatment in there, but it's sequestering the iron and manganese with the orthophosphate that we
Right.
use in there.
And
It's not filtering. And
there's
what
no
happens-
filtering, it's a chemical injection.
It is,
Yeah.
right. And then what happens is sometimes when people turn their faucets on and you introduce it to the air, sometimes the iron and manganese comes out of the solution, which in the end, people will say they got brown water
Yeah.
or whatnot.
Do you think that all the excess manganese and iron that we have just in our water anyway, in the ground, does that contribute to the filters getting like clogged or?
It does. The treatment plant itself there operates about 4 days, and then 4 days at about 14, 15 hours a day. And then after 4 days, it goes into an automatic backwash, which is about 2 hours to backwash. So one of the things that came up is that have to have some kind of redundancy with the treatment plant, because right now, if the treatment plant's not running, it's not, the only thing that's moving water is well 4. So we had that study done with Curito Water, which was the same company that actually designed the filter in 2003. And they're trying to come up with some ideas of how to either go with a second filter years down the road, a second filter so that while it's backwashing, we could still produce water. But right now, that system is set up so when it goes into a backwash, it has to shut down.
So would it be more cost-effective to have that, I don't want to say rehabilitated, that's not the right word, improved, the way that you just said?
Right.
Rather than having a complete new treatment facility that's
Right.
completely autonomous?
Yeah, I think in the end, I think, when the time comes, is they simply, that's a whole big, if you've been out there, it's a whole big sand pit. So I mean, all they'd have to do is they would have to add on, foundation, open up the building, and they would have to put either a second filter or whatever they have for, that filter is 2004, so they may have a better style filter or a different setup.
So, we all hope that something like this never happens,
Yeah.
but there is a fueling station being built in our wellhead protection area.
Right.
Over there on Scribner. And if there was contamination that came off of that, then it would behoove us to have water source someplace other than
Correct.
Cider Ferry.
Correct.
So one of the things that we were thinking about is that because we're gonna be researching tank locations.
Sure.
Is also where there might be other suitable places for, looking at the aquifer map and stuff
Right.
to see if there's other suitable places where we could put a third area so that we'd have tertiary on the
Right.
filtering as well.
Right. The town, at some point, the town, same thing as keeping things on the radar, is you have the two wells at the Tebow property that, I don't think you remember Dennis McCarthy.
Yeah.
So when Dennis was here, they put in, I think it's 2 8-inch wells, or something like that, over at the Tebow property. And those wells were putting out, I believe, 1,000 gallons a minute. And I was told that those wells is what was gonna take this town into the future. And then, you may be able to help me with this,
Yeah.
Kevin, but there was something happened with the town in Tebow, and the short story is we got kicked out, and they said, we lost control of the wells.
One thing is that to get the water from there across over the highway, they had to put a bridge in.
Yeah.
And I think the bridge became very cost prohibitive to put the pipe underneath the bridge to come over the swamp to get to,
Yeah.
to get to where the propane place is beside
Mhm.
that, and come through and then bring the water main up to the highway. So that was a sticking point in there.
Right.
And then he wanted to do some developing out there. I don't think that worked out the way he wanted it to either.
Okay. So we did pay, the town did pay to have those wells done, and they were all tested, and they're still out there to this day, so, I mean, that'd be something.
Is that information in the zip files that you?
I don't, that one there, I do have the testing report. I have it's a thick book, and I do have that in the office, cause everything I do is I scan things and I put them in the computer. I don't think we have anything electronic on that, but I can figure something out so that can end up in the files.
If you can part with it, I don't mind scanning it and then giving you
Okay.
it back.
Sure.
If you're okay with that.
Yep.
I would hate to have you do a bunch of menial office stuff that,
Right.
we're happy to do.
Right. Yep.
Back in the
Well.
day. Before we had the computers, okay, let's print it for you.
Right. Everything was on, but that, to me, that, whatever that takes to, people need to know that well, and I think Weston and Sampson is already aware of it, Underwood is also aware of that well.
And there's a pretty big aquifer too under there too, like.
It is.
I looked at it.
Right.
I'll reach out to them and see if they have anything on it as well.
Sure.
And, so, I hear Tebow a lot when we start talking about wells, and
Okay.
I've never really got the full story before, so that's the most concise narrative that I've ever
Okay.
heard on it.
Right.
So-
It was definitely done, and that was explained to me when I started with the water department, and that was, those wells were potentially gonna take the town into the future.
They don't have motors, or they don't have pumps in them, they just have little pipes in the ground.
I think it's just the pipes.
Yeah, I think so.
But they did all the testing, and I think all that information is in the book that I have.
Yeah, good water.
What's the radius around town well?
The radius around the town wells themselves are 400 feet. And then, after that, we have a sanitary protection area that, so basically, we have to follow best management practices with the state, so every 3 years, myself and my guys, we have to go out and we have to visit all the sites in the town aquifer to, make sure that the things are, the people aren't, no gas
Yeah.
laying around and everything is, heating oil, tanks, so we.
Bullets.
So,
Bullets.
correct, so the last time I knew, when we do like the treatment plant side of things there, that takes us all the way to Industrial Drive, to Jackson Lumber. It would all be part of that other parcel that's out back. And then we do, we got all of, heck was the other one?
So I think
I have
it's,
a whole list of, there's like 30 sites we have to visit.
How large is that sanitary,
It-
sanitary, and then the 400 feet, and then that other buffer?
Right, I don't remember exactly the footage,
The-
but we have, all our sites that we visit. It takes us down towards,
Mhm.
Buster Hammond's,
Yeah,
out
'cause that's quite
through
a,
there.
quite a
And it's on the
distance.
aquifer bottom.
it's.
It is,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, the wellhead protection area for a large, large drop bedrock
Mhm.
well is 4,000 feet.
Oh,
And then they can walk that back, but there's a whole list of testing and stuff that they need to do to bring that back, but 4,000 is the default.
4,000.
Right, we got two separate, because of when they put well 4 in, so we have, the state has us listed, I think it's, site GA and then
Oh, yes, yes,
GA1.
yes.
So, well 4, that moves us out a little bit, so we have to test, we have to, do inspections like at happy endings, auto body, and down towards the highway garage. I think it takes us as far as the highway garage, and then we go back up towards the school.
Mhm.
I know my property was part of
Yes,
that,
you're part of the, I think, the GA.
yeah. And we passed with flying colors, I'm excited.
Yay.
The current fire chief had brought up a couple of concerns. One of them was about taking Orchard down before we had a third tank.
Correct.
The other thing that he had mentioned to me was that they would like to look into putting their radio antenna on the 156 tank when it's rehabilitated.
Yes, he had spoke to me as well about it.
And I know that they have their own funds for communication and stuff,
Mhm.
but I'm thinking like if there needs to be a platform on there, if there needs to be a little, shed
Right.
for because we were talking about the the mixing pump for the
Yes.
tank, and
Right.
that we might have to expand that so we can put all of the stuff into one.
Correct.
And I don't know if Weston and Sampson, I haven't read that scope close enough to know
Okay.
if they've looked at that or not.
I talked to the chief about it, he had mentioned to me, I can talk to Weston and Sampson to see if they've added it to the scope, but generally, if you go to the town of Epping or any of those, you're gonna see antennas hanging off a lot of water towers, so, some of them, I think it makes them you can make some money off of putting people's
Mhm.
antennas and stuff, so.
Well,
we'll look
this,
into it.
this is definitely something that I was thinking about for tank number 3, is,
Right.
you know, can we assuage some of that cost by, you know, I don't know, putting an advertisement up there?
I got you,
Putting
right.
some antennas up there. you
Sure.
know? And, but I didn't know if that requires extra safety, you know, infrastructure on the tank and stuff
Right.
like that.
There is
so.
some kind of brackets or something that they have to put on there to support all that. I don't know exactly. This would be, I haven't had any antennas on my towers, so this would be new to me as well.
All right.
So, but,
Well, I told him I'd bring it up so that we got it on record.
Right.
And
Right.
I think it would be a great idea if we can help out our emergency services.
Yeah.
We're not live right now, but we're recording.
Sure,
So
sure.
for people that will watch this eventually, the reason that they want to put the antenna on top of the tower is because they get better coverage up there.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's as simple as that. It makes perfect sense. We own the tower.
Right.
It's for our guys. It helps keep them safe and in communication, so why wouldn't we do it?
right. One of the things that sometimes they put up there, the towns, is when they do their meter reading program, that those operate, if they go radio read, those operate off of antenna, and the antennas usually generally end up on the water tower because that's the highest point. So they do, it does happen.
The last time that there was a review of the tanks, the Long Hill tank was fine except for some cosmetic stuff, basically. When is that gonna be due for like a real, you know, rehabilitation?
Right, usually, the, most of the coatings are good for usually like 20 years. In between that, we have the water that's, a regulation, AWWA regulation anyway, but, the towers, water towers have to be inspected every, between 3 and 5 years. So when they do these inspections, as we have, is they come in and they actually have, we use, Underwater Solutions out of Massachusetts, and they have divers. And what they do is they go in and they go inside the tower and they vacuum out the sediment at the bottom of the tower. And then while they're in there, they take pictures of the ladders, the hatches, all the mechanical pieces that they have, mixers. They look at all that stuff, they inspect it, and then they come back, obviously, with a report. Long Hill currently has been coming back with decent reports, but that's another tower that has to stay in the program, and we have to keep an eye on that. Eventually, we're talking about putting a mixer in 156. So one of the things, actually, I just recently talked to Underwater Solutions and talked to them that I wanna try to see if the town is interested in bundling these two towers in a sense, because we put a mixer in 156, we should put a mixer in Long Hill as well.
Absolutely.
And just do this, and the inside, besides the outside coating, it has like a stucco finish on it, and it's got some cracking, but it's a concrete tank, so structurally, there's nothing wrong with it, but over time, the inside, you should have those, like they take them out of service, they pressure wash them, and then they put like they call a patinite coating on the inside that helps keep the algae and, everything from sticking to the side walls of it, so, that's all in the next Long Hill should be, at some point, should be pressure washed, and, you know, so I'm trying to, it's like lining the stars up, to try to say we got one, we have to prioritize on Route 156, but once things get moving, if there's pieces and parts, it can be incorporated with Long Hill, and if it's a savings of the town, then that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, when we do the mixer for 156, Long Hill was always part of that plan.
Gotcha, okay, good.
Orchard was when it was still gonna be
Yeah.
saved, Orchard, so
Right.
all three would have them, but those two definitely will, and any
Yeah.
tank will have it as well,
Right.
because with 3 tanks, we'll be over our usable capacity.
Correct.
So we need, because you want to turn that water over.
Right.
And we're not turning it over fast enough when we're
Correct.
slow, so.
Correct.
I wondered how they got the pictures, you know, inside, cause I
Right.
had seen some, I think maybe it was Long Hill, and it was like the, whatever at the bottom, the gaskets, I'm like, oh, that's an underwater picture, how'd they get that?
Right. Yeah, it's kinda neat how they do it, it's, the gear that they wear is amazing, they go in and it's like an oversized pool filter is what it is, and a pool vacuum, and they just go in there and they vacuum, and actually, fortunately with the sediment that builds on average, is about a 1/16 of an inch of sediment in a 3 to 5 year window, so the water is pretty clean, you know, you're gonna get a little sediment, you know, if you have a water main break, or, you know, if everything moves around, that's where it ends up, is in your towers.
That's a very specialized business. I would imagine that's not cheap.
It's about $4,500 to have them come in and do that.
Conscom, you guys can
Yeah.
train some turtles, we'll put GoPros on their back
There
and
we
drop them in
go.
there.
A good example, like Long Hill and 156, it takes them about 4 hours to clean those towers, but when they do Orchard Street, it takes them all day because of they gotta, we have to help them get their gear up, because there's no,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't drive a pickup up there, you probably have seen it, so.
Yeah.
We usually borrow the police department's 4-wheeler, and then we have, you know, we'll get a little yard car and we'll load their gear into that, and then we'll haul it up to the hill, and then we haul it back down, so.
Would think it would be a little more dangerous too, because it's higher
Yeah.
pressure at the bottom of that tank than the
Right.
other ones.
Correct.
It's so old, you'd be afraid to
Right.
leave it and.
So it's just one of those things, it's nice that the towers it's there, it's as old as it is, it's got some history to it, but, it's not serving, you know, the amount of water that's in there, it's not serving the town like it did over 100 years ago, so.
And how often do they get drained and cleaned?
They never get drained, they get cleaned while in service type thing, they keep the water in it, and then they just go in and do it, but it's 3 to 5 years. We're usually closer to the kind of the 5th, by the time we get them in rotation, everything is within that 5th year, usually
So
around
this
the
does
5th.
happen, it's not been put aside, the budget
Correct.
takes care of this?
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
But I think that was the biggest, I just wanted to make sure you were aware of, I didn't wanna surprise you. With that letter that I wrote, I totally understand the whole.
Oh, about Orchard
situation.
Street.
Yeah, and the
And
rehab of 156, so I just wanted, you know, I just, those were my biggest concern, is that with a new construction, new tower, so to speak, there's a lot of funding, and it's still expensive, but there's funding available where you're rehabbing the tower, you know, we're gonna have to juggle a few things around to do it, and then just with Orchard Street going offline, there could be maybe a couple year window or something like that, that we could be on the edge of our seat, only if we have a real bad water main break or a bad structure fire, cause you'll be less that 90, 100,000 gallons.
But I thought we were gonna
Yeah.
build the new one before we
Yeah, that's-
decommissioned Orchard Street.
It's kind of a
Right.
gray area, because we
Oh.
have to address the Orchard Street tank for DES, but we're not prepared to build the 3rd tank yet until we've checked off a couple of these boxes. And so I'm hoping that we can sort of shift Orchard Street down, once we've completed the water main and the
Correct.
rehabilitation, that we can go to DES and say, hey, now we need to keep Orchard online for a little bit longer while we do this.
Right.
Give us a break.
Right, and it's doable, this is something to keep in mind, I mean, as long as, cause right now, especially when we talk about having water towers cleaned, Route 156 would be technically due in the next couple years, so if that tower is obviously being rehabbed, we don't have to have the tower cleaned, but if Orchard Street stays in service, then
We might
well,
have to
we
do
may not
another
have no
cleaning
choice.
before it comes down.
I'm still responsible to keep the water quality, so you need to keep those clean. So it'd be nice in the end if the timing was right, then they're just coming down and we don't have to clean them. But if Orchard Street stays in a little longer than anticipated, then we'd be looking at maybe another cleaning on that.
And what is the ballpark for Orchard Street? Do you know, is it, $5,000, is it 25,000?
As far
For,
as.
for just the cleaning?
Oh, for the cleaning, the cleanings are the same between all three. It's been about $4,500 to have them come in and clean and inspect.
Okay.
It'd probably, obviously there'll be increases, but, I think we're gonna still be around whatever the $5,000
That's
or whatever in that
just
window.
in my mind so that I can sort
Right.
of calculate it.
Sure.
So the tanks that don't have mixers, I assume the mixing is to keep sediment and stuff moving around, right? To keep them.
What it does, it just
aerated.
keeps the water spinning, cause we put obviously chemicals in the water, chlorine, all that. So what happens when you don't have the mixers, then everything just sits there and it just kind of moves when the water moves. With the mixers, it serves a couple purposes. It keeps the water spinning, so it keeps the chlorine activated and mixes throughout the system, because right now you get areas, sections of the tower that have more chlorine than others. The mixers keep it even.
Sure.
And then it's even more important during the winter time. That's why we had 2 repairs done on 156, because what happens is no matter, we've tried to adjust it over the years, as long as you keep the water moving, it won't freeze. But no matter what you do with that, you always end up with like a 10 or 12-inch ice cap up in there, and what happens is that moves.
Tries to
Yeah.
scrape
And
the
it's
inside
scraping
like a
the
piston.
walls
Yeah.
and all
Right.
that did. So with the mixers in place, you don't have to worry about the ice cap, because it's gonna be constantly moving the water.
So this is gonna be a really stupid question. Does anybody have temporary water storage tanks?
That's a good question.
As far as,
In an emergency, let's just say, there's gotta be places out there that have disaster areas that maybe wells and storage tanks get demolished, or they can't rebuild them in a day. Thinking some big giant, like, plastic
on a
or,
flatbed.
super, just a
Yeah.
tank, maybe 10,000 gallons or something that,
you mean like a spare water tank or
Yes.
something like
Yeah.
that? Yeah, I mean,
Portable.
they make, I think one of the plans that Weston and Sampson was gonna do is to kind of spell all this out, so when they do this, while they're doing the water tower work, that they're gonna have plans in place, should this happen, should that happen. I don't know exactly what their plan is, but they do have situations where you can have like temporary storage tanks, I believe. Or for some reason, if your pumps fail, we've had to do it in the past. If we had a major problem, then we've had water actually hauled in from outside water companies, and they filled our towers that way.
yeah, I mean, there's large pool company, I'm not saying use
Correct.
pool water, but,
Right.
there's gotta be a way to bring large amounts of water into a
Correct.
town on a temporary basis.
Right.
Okay, so I guess it wasn't a stupid question.
Right.
No, that's a good question.
I'm wondering, kind of similar to that, if there's a temporary filtering system that we could use, that we could draw water right out of the lamprey or the lake or something.
You definitely wouldn't wanna, at this point, pull anything from any outside the river source or anything.
I read the
like
paper,
that.
I read the paper.
But actually, what we do is, we've had 2 major events in town since I've been here, where we had to have tankers come in. Actually, you remember,
Yeah.
remember those? And what happens is they actually came from Buxton Water, which they have their own facility in, I think Exeter.
Yeah.
And it's all treated water. So what happens is they come in, they bring the tanker in, and then we feed it through a fire hydrant to fill the system. But before it goes into the system, we actually have to take samples. We're required by the state. We gotta
Makes
take
sense.
samples of that water and make sure that the chlorine is in there, because sometimes when you mix different sources, then that can really upset the whole water, and it can start doing some, turning colors and stuff like that.
It's definitely not ideal. We had talked about before that when, like even with flushing the system, if the water's going in a direction that it's not typically going,
Right.
that it loosens up
Yes,
stuff
it does.
inside the pipe. So if you're
Correct.
backfilling through a hydrant, then people's gonna get brown
Right.
water and stuff like
Correct.
that.
It's something you gotta be very, you don't wanna do it at all if you can help it, but if you do it, you're gonna be very careful. And, you have to put it in at a certain rate, you can't just, crank the volume right up, because then you can start breaking your pipe. So,
Right.
I think when we did it those 2 times there, we only put it in at like 150 gallons a minute, because the system is used to pumping no more than probably like 350, 300, and no more than like 400 gallons a minute through the system.
This has been the most informative conversation I've had with anyone from the town ever, just for the record.
Right, actually, I'm surprised that, no one else was here type thing, but I'm glad I was able to, speak and answer some of the questions, because I think it's important everybody works together at this point, everybody's trying to come to a common goal, and I think the system's savable, but it just is, as long as everybody knows all the information and what we can and can't do type thing, so.
So I'm sure that we'll be in contact previous to this, but
Right.
we have another meeting in 2 weeks at the
Sure.
Media Center on Wednesday, 5 p.m.
Right.
And you have an open invitation to come anytime that you want.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem coming, definitely if, Peter had something else he had to do tonight, so he couldn't make it, Peter is planning on attending some of the meetings and stuff like that, but definitely if, there is a topic coming up and, you're gonna have some questions from the water department and public works side, then definitely just, let us know, send us an email and let us know, and then that way,
You don't want us to
We're not leaving you
blindside you
hanging.
with questions? Hold them in reserve?
No,
He's pretty good on the spot. I'm
Absolutely.
pretty impressed.
Right, actually, I mean, since the Baptist church meeting, like I said, I'm getting more comfortable with the names. Because I generally didn't speak, it was always the director
Well,
took care
Well,
of
you
it.
did
Trial
a
by
great
fire.
job. You did a great job. You know what, your honesty came out, and that's what we just need.
Right.
And just tagging on to Jim's, I guess, request to have you attend these meetings. I mean, our first name is water, right?
Sure.
Water Planning Committee. So we're always gonna be talking about water.
Right.
And I think the more people that are involved, such as yourself, with your expertise and your authority,
Right.
having you at these meetings, we can move forward much quicker.
Sure, I
It's not,
understand.
well, okay, well, I'll contact this person and
Right.
get an answer, right? It's real time. So the more people that can attend and be involved,
Right.
we can just get this thing done.
Right, I think the biggest fight, the biggest issue you have with this town is that there isn't that many people on the town water. It's a very small, it's only 3,300 people out of 10,000 on the water system. So, and we're in a position where we're getting ready to spend a lot of money, so it's very expensive, it's hard on the people, I mean, versus if you go to Manchester, or everybody's on town water. So, this is probably a unique situation.
But we also can't expand the system until we
Correct.
have the
Yeah.
system stable
That's
enough
right.
to be able to expand it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, and actually, I just wanted to make a statement where, because I've worked with Kevin a lot of years being on the department, but when we talk about water demand and stuff like that, like we've had, since I've been here, we had 2 major structure fires.
Yep.
And I have had to go to Kevin, if there's a water main break or a structure fire, it draws those towers down very, very fast. It's usually like 4 or 5 feet in a matter of maybe an hour. Just to get an idea how small the system is. So I've had to approach Kevin on a couple occasions to let him know that when we get down to a low tower alarm, because everything is through the SCADA system at the plant, so we get the calls on our phone. So I've had to approach Kevin to say, we're at a low tower, or when we get ready to get to low tower, I would say you might wanna think about, drawing from another source, or start gearing to have tankers, other towns or tankers to come in, so.
That's a scary spot to be in.
Yeah.
Billy's been good to
Right.
have him, especially him, keeping an eye on things for us like that, cause when we're all busy, it's good that he's watching.
Right, I mean, I know definitely they weren't happy to see me pull up and say, yeah, I'm getting a low tower, but what I've always done anyways is I don't wait for the low tower. My low tower is at 41 feet, so if I'm at 44 feet, that's when I go to them and say, hey, we're starting to draw pretty hard on the system. And I had to approach the current chief with, when we had the Sunview apartment
Yes.
fires.
Awful.
And if I may, just, I respect your comment about so many people are on the water system and others are not.
Right.
But in the long run, taxes do have in a way of leveling out, okay? There's some of us that, we don't have any children in the school system,
Sure.
but we're on town water, you know?
Right.
Or vice versa, we have children in the school system
Mhm.
and we're on town water. So some use a little bit more here and some use a little bit less there, but we are a community. And
Right.
for the whole community to work, we are going to almost always be paying for something that we're not using,
Sure.
but ultimately we do. We want a Hannaford's in town, right?
Correct.
You know, there's certain services we want in town, and it
Right.
does come at a cost, whether we use it or not every day.
Right.
So I don't want people to hinge on that, you
Right.
know, it's a divide, right? So, well, I don't use town water. You know,
Right.
you do a lot more than that. We're protecting all of the wells. I mean, everybody serves from the same aquifer. You know, the underground doesn't say, oh, this person pays and this person doesn't. We gotta
Right.
keep all the water in the town safe, so.
And we,
Right.
and we absolutely need it for fire safety.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But also, we talked about this before, but the water users pay, the taxpayers pay. The taxpayers who are water users pay twice, and the developer and the realtor and the person that's making the money is not paying very much.
But we're gonna
So I
change
think
that.
Oh, yeah.
The study is being worked on, and that study's gonna help that.
Right.
Exactly.
Yes.
So we can't charge hookup fees if we don't have any hookups.
Right.
So,
Right.
we need to get the system up to a point where we can start connecting people, because, that's what's happening now, is that the developers are like, oh, I can't get that, well, I'm gonna drop a straw right here into your aquifer.
Right.
And, that's something that we're gonna be discussing here, is, doing a little research on that and find out what the consequences of putting a well within, you know, a
Sure.
certain distance
Yeah.
from our town wells is, and stuff
Right.
like that.
Right.
Now, are you required to be notified by the state or anyone when somebody is requesting to put a well, like, within our wellhead protection area?
Any projects, like there's a list of like 8 projects right now, the people have been to some of the TRC meetings, and those projects are supposed to, those bigger ones are supposed to go before the state to get, I think, state approval. For some of them to have the bigger property, residential usually comes through our office. That is manageable, but, any warehouses or anything like that, Ridgewood Commons on Chester Road, they're all supposed to go through like the state approval, and the state comes back and usually checks with us to say, you know, basically who, you got people looking to connect.
Is Ridgewood Commons now looking to drill instead of connect to the system?
No, Ridgewood Commons already has, water running into the property now. They actually,
Okay.
last winter, they started running the water mains into the property, so.
Is that 102?
Yes, it
The
is,
Meadows.
41 Chester Road,
Pardon me.
yes.
So I didn't get it, I'm so sorry. It's not mandatory that when somebody approaches the state, says, I wanna drill a well, whether it's residential, subdivision, site, humongous warehouse, it's not mandatory that you get notified? that somebody's drilling a well in our town?
If it's a private well, we don't usually get generally notified. Usually what happens is they approach us for an application, usually to hook up the town water, if I'm understanding you correctly, and then.
No, just, I'm saying just drilling wells, not town water. If somebody buys a plot of land and decides to put a well there, the town doesn't know that, that's not on a map anywhere, we don't have a record of that?
I'm not usually notified except
Okay.
for any, like, if we're talking just residential, I never get any, records or no phone calls, but I do if it's a commercial property, one way or another, I usually, cause it's gotta go through the planning
Yeah.
board, it's gotta go through the process, so that's how we end up knowing about it. And then anything commercial generally has to go through
Right.
state approval, and then the state will usually
Yeah.
check with us to say, do you have the water to take care of this?
That's my question.
That's a very good point that we need to circle back on is,
Yeah.
when we are getting notified by the state and they're asking us, because not from your department, I don't wanna point your
Yeah,
fingers,
yeah.
but we've received notifications from the state before that weren't addressed.
Okay.
And, I'm sorry, there is one thing that I wanted to bring up. So, obviously, we wanna make sure that that's not happening in the future.
Right.
And, so, it would be nice to know, like, when we are required to be notified. And,
Correct.
so, like, we're talking about wells, so if somebody's drilling a well for their house, you don't hear about it, but if somebody's doing a community well for a housing development
Right.
or something like that, then you're gonna get notified by the state that that's.
Right, I guess I would look into, just to clarify that I'm not giving you wrong information, Ed, in the position I'm in as a foreman, generally what happens is the director usually goes to the meetings, and then usually they end up coming back to me and say, hey, there's a project going on down on such and such a road, they're gonna be connecting into town water. That's the information I get currently. Sometimes I don't get direct calls from the state or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's usually from the director to say, hey, just so you know, there's a mega X coming in, or whatnot.
It's just a process question, so.
Correct.
And I was wondering, and I don't know if you can answer, but, so with all the large projects coming into town and, expansion and we're growing and all that, when was the last time we had an actual hydrological study done so that we know how much water we have in our aquifers? When was the last time that was done? Does anybody know?
Right now, that's kind of, we're going through a rate study. Started with a rate study, and they were doing a water supply study. We're doing that now. They have the finished report hasn't come out just yet, that I've seen anyway. But that's what they're trying to figure out, is all these projects that are coming into town, and what is the water demand, and what are
Yes.
we currently doing right now. The quick answer that I've received is that we're holding our own right now. We really don't have the water supply to do anything more. So, anybody right now on my list, it's in my letter that you'll see anyways, is, I feel at this point, the only ones we're really committed to, because they were signed off in like 2019, 2020, is unfortunately, Chester Ridgewood Commons. They've already got an approval from the town. Letter that was signed by the town saying that they were approved, and then, Silver Fox Lane. So Silver Fox Lane is both Play, Laugh and Grow, it's Starbucks, 603 storage, and then there's another lot out there.
Yep.
Do you know who?
And the only reason, well, sorry,
No, please
the
go
only
ahead.
reason I asked that is because you hear on the news lately all these, like, out in Arizona, all these other places, other states where their aquifers are just being drained dry,
Correct.
and then they have, the town has no water. So
Right.
the town becomes a ghost town, and there's
Correct.
no water. It's like,
Right.
what can you do without water?
Correct.
You know, can't
And
live.
I'm going back to my old memories here. I raised my kids in Derry, and when they started providing town sewer to homes, it was mandated that they had to hook up if it went by your street, by your house.
Mhm.
Is that true for town water, or you have an option?
In Raymond, it's an option.
It's always an option.
Some towns are that you have to connect the water, you have to connect the town sewer, but Raymond has always been, if you have your own well and you like it, then you can keep that. We've had, in the years I worked for the town, we've had a handful of people that had private wells that they still had town water going out front, but they choose to keep their wells. And they came to us for an emergency connection. And then sometimes they connect, and then between the connection fees and all that, a lot of times, by the time I get done telling them what the fees are, they say, well, it's cheaper for me to replace the pump in my well.
Mhm.
Unless it's some kind of a contamination issue, then usually they'll connect. But we've had a handful of emergency connections.
In your opinion, would it be better for more people to be on a town system than all individual wells, or does it even matter?
I'm not sure, I don't really know what truthfully the answer to that question would be. I mean, I would imagine the more people that connect to town water, the more money that's going into the system and upgrades and, because that's where we're at now. We got a lot of different things, treatment plant, water towers, and there's only a small group that's on the system.
Need more customers.
That's what I'm thinking. I think,
Yeah.
it would, there's more control over it, but that's also mean probably better quality, it's being maintained, and,
Right,
thank you.
yeah, no problem.
I'll bring this up another time. Thank you very much. Does anybody have anything else for Mr. Scott Ketty before we release him from this torture?
No problem. I like to get the message across and, hope we can, it's just, we're in a kind of, I think we're in a situation, so it's something we gotta try to work on to try to, see what we can do. It's gonna be most cost effective, so.
I think we're all looking at the same star now.
Yeah.
We need to start making progress.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think the state just wants to be able to have an answer so that, we can, they know we're moving forward and we got something going, so.
All right, one more question.
Yeah, ask away.
Do you know if Peter has, that's the DPW director, Peter
Correct.
Manor, if Peter has requested the scope of work for Orchard Street from Weston and Sampson?
I don't know that for certain. I'd probably say, send us
follow
an
up.
email, send us an email, or email him or whatnot.
Because what I'm seeing is, I'm seeing boxes getting checked off. So, we're
Sure.
not tearing up the roads, we're not building new tanks
Right.
yet,
Right.
but we are checking all the boxes that need to be done
Sure.
before those things happen. So
Correct.
we are making progress, even though you can't see it with your eyes.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I appreciate that. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, and I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was a letter that had come in from NHDES that I brought up at the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday. I just run
Okay.
across it, and it was about an annual report for the landfill. And just so anybody that was watching that knows, that had already been addressed by Peter without anybody having to ask him. It
Oh.
was done over a month ago that it was taken care of.
Okay.
It's just that it wasn't updated on NHDES One Stop.
Okay.
And I will say that it's the first time I've ever run across anything that was an open item that had already been taken care of. It was a wonderful thing to see.
Yay, Peter.
But,
I know that usually was done, even though I'm doing water, but I know that was usually done once a year, and I've had people come into the office asking me for reports from the testing at the transfer station, but unfortunately, I don't see any of those reports. That would all fall, the director would have those reports.
right on. Well, I appreciate, I'm sure we all appreciate very much the work that you're doing, and,
Yes,
and everybody that's over there in the DPW.
Right.
Really appreciate it, and we know that it bears saying, the water is, here is treated, it's clean, it's safe, and
Right.
there
Yeah.
is no issue with our water.
Right.
I drink it every day.
Right. Things kinda happen with the system if we're flushing hydrants, or we have a water main break. I mean, it's never a perfect.
Unavoidable.
No
Yeah.
system, municipal system is perfect. You're gonna have good and bad days, but that's why we test on a daily basis in all the buildings.
From my experience, there's been a lot more good days than bad ones. And a lot of the quote-unquote bad ones can be avoided if people are aware, like when there's flushing.
Correct.
Flush their lines between the main and their own home
Correct.
with cold water. Don't try to flush the hot water,
Right,
because you're just
right.
drawing it into your hot water tank.
Right.
But stuff like that, and we want to be part of getting that information out to people too, so that everybody
Right.
has a better experience with the system.
Right, I'd say within a year's time, on average, looks like I might get maybe 7 to 10 calls if someone complains of dirty water or whatnot. So, in a year's time, and that's pretty decent. It's not like a every other day type thing, so, but it does happen. It's not no system is perfect type thing, so,
You're doing a great job.
thank you.
Yes.
Thanks again for coming out tonight. I really
Yep.
appreciate it. You
And then-
don't have to stay for the rest of this.
I will, I'm working on those within the next day, so I'll have those zip files together. So, I'm just, finishing off the list to get what I can in there. It's gonna be a lot of reading material. There's actually more than what you asked for.
That's
But
good.
There's gonna be a lot of reading material and some background, especially 156 and the treatment plant, so you can kinda go through that, and any other questions, you just kinda kick them back to us, and then, cause most of the stuff is in the computer at this point, so
Right on.
I can grab it rather quickly.
Seems like a lot of this stuff is right up in your noggin there.
Yeah.
Some of it is, I can't remember all the numbers, it's a lot of numbers to remember all of them, but if I don't, then I can usually rely on the computer, that's all my databases are, so. We're a long way from having things on paper at this point, so everything's electronic, 'cause-
And matchbooks.
yeah.
You've got that historical knowledge in your head.
But very good.
Yeah,
Thank
Have
you.
have a good night, and
Thank
I'll
you,
get
Scott.
that information to you.
Thank you,
Thank
Scott.
you.
All right, take
Appreciate
care.
it.
Okay, so the next thing was review application nominations for new members. And I do have an application here from Mr. Warren Gibby, who's expressed an interest in joining us. I was expecting him tonight, so I hope everything's okay, and that we see him at the next meeting, because we look forward to taking it under consideration. Does anybody have any old business that they want to go over?
I know, is, the rate study, is that old business, or are we gonna look at that? or-
Because we haven't actually discussed it here, then that'll be new business.
Yeah, I think what I have is new to water planning, old for planning board.
All right, so the only old business that I wanted to really look at was our checklist with the Board of Selectmen. So nothing has really come off the list, but there's a lot of things that are almost ready to come off the list, and as soon as I get those files from Peter, we'll be able to take care of a lot of that. One of the things that we talked about at the Board of Selectmen meeting on Monday was the Water Planning Committee being the entity that would facilitate the town commenting on pending applications before the state. So if somebody's got a wetlands permit, a dredge and fill, AOT permit, that the town is really obligated to comment if there's an issue.
Mhm.
Otherwise, DES doesn't know. And DES is an entity that they will help you if you help yourself. And so the Board of Selectmen have given us the authority to make those recommendations or those comments and ask questions to the state on pending applications, provided that we have the approval of the planning board, because we're a subcommittee of the planning board. So that's gonna, I'll make a motion on that at the planning board tomorrow, and see if we get that through. If that does happen, then we need somebody to sort of take the reins on finding out what applications are currently before the state and which ones that we want to comment on. It can get a volunteer for anybody that would like to do that, provided that we have the authority from the planning board.
Does
I-
that information go to the conservation people? Because they make recommendations on water.
I'm not sure which ones do, I don't know if they all do, but it's really a pretty simple check on NHDS One Stop. You just, you put in the town of Raymond, you check off the one that you want, and then you sort them by their, by the date.
I could do that.
Kathy, you'll do that for us?
I could do that.
All right, so, it's not an assignment yet.
I'm familiar with some of the things
And I can show you some shortcuts that'll make it
Oh, good.
pretty easy. But we'll wait for the vote of the planning board before
Okay.
we do anything with that. You can do whatever you want as a private citizen, but you wouldn't be acting with the authority of the
Of the
committee
committee.
until after we have that permission. The recommendations that I had listed here were things like the fire chief, the current fire chief wanted to put the antenna on the tank, and a lot of the stuff that we talked with the water foreman, Mr. Ketty. The next thing is authorization to act on behalf of the committee. So we need to have meetings with DES. I need to have meetings with the Department of Public Works Director and stuff like that. And I can't do that officially unless I have the authority of the committee to speak for the committee when I'm in those meetings. And I know that if I was a member of the committee, and I'd be like, well, why do you get to make all the decisions for us? But the reality is that we have to be flexible enough to, be able to go to Portsmouth and meet with Jen Mates and DES and stuff like that. And getting the board together and doing that it's just not feasible.
No.
that
And
can
I
see.
would
Not
say too,
feasible.
you have to meet with professionals during business hours.
Right.
You have to be able to probably have multiple meetings in a week, talk to this person, then go talk to that person. And time is of the essence right now.
It really is.
So I personally would love to make the motion to appoint you, our liaison, to act on our behalf in an official capacity.
I'll second that, if you can squeeze it into your schedule.
Well, this
Well, let me
is
clarify.
important
I said
enough to.
I would like to make the motion, I didn't actually officially make it, because I said you, so I want to, I'm sorry, I make the motion to appoint Jim McLeod, our official liaison, for all meetings related to water, for the Water Planning Committee.
Oh, I will second that motion.
Any further discussion?
Vote
I'll call for the vote. Chief?
in favor.
Kathy, aye.
I vote yes.
Aye, unanimous, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, something I didn't mention, and when we did roll call, sorry, is Scott Campbell is the chair of the select board, and they have a meeting, so we got trumped.
That's okay.
But that is an excused absence, obviously.
Yes.
I haven't seen Tim in a while.
Okay, next steps and expectations. Well, we talked a lot about the next steps with Scott and what the expectations are. Let me pause there for a minute. Mr. Gibby, come on in.
Hey.
Were your ears burning, or?
Yeah.
So, Warren Gibby has joined the meeting, and so I'd like to go back to our item 4 on here, which is the review of applications.
Big stack.
Why don't you join us at this table over here, sir? So you handed me your application at a recent meeting, and this is all filled out completely and properly, and I've seen you at many planning board meetings. And I know that you're attentive, that you are involved, and why do you want to join us?
To help out and be part of the solution instead of just complaining about the problem.
Like that? Does anybody
Yeah,
have
I like
any
that.
questions or comments for Mr. Gibby?
I know Warren from a few committees, and he always asks really good pertinent questions.
So would we make a motion for him tonight, for the plan? Then I'll move a motion that Warren Gibby be put on our board.
Ooh, I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
Bear with me for just a moment. I'll call for the vote. Chief, we'll start down there.
Yes.
Kathy, yes.
Jim, aye.
I vote yes.
It is unanimous. So
Yay.
the only thing that you'll need to do is pop in to take your oath in town hall. And what I'll do is I'll give them a heads up.
Jim, can I give you this?
Yes.
That's your assignment.
So you can't vote, but feel free to participate. When I get this posted up, you should watch it. We had a great conversation with Scott Keddy, the water foreman. I don't know if you passed him on the way in. He just left. We are running a little low on time, but that's good because we had such a great conversation with Scott. So as far as next steps, I do have another water planning committee meeting scheduled for 2 weeks from now on the 30th, same time, but we'll be back in the media center then. And yeah, you told me you're gonna be away, but so next steps for me is I'm going to coordinate with the DPW director, Peter, and reach out to NHDES. that line of communication has been broken for a little while, and between the committee and NHDS, so we need to re-energize that and let them know where we are and where we're going. And at this point, where we're going is, we've got the scope of work for the main line, the Main Street water line, rather, is in progress. I'm gonna verify with Peter that they have approved the scope of work for the rehabilitation of 156, and I'm gonna see if we have asked for that scope of work for the Orchard Street tank. And then, once I have that information, I'm gonna reach out to the DES and let them know where our progress is now and find out what it is exactly that they need from us for an actual corrective action plan to
And
be able
water-
to.
Water main extension, that would be part of that.
Yeah, that's the first thing on the list, but everybody knows that needs to
Yep.
get done, so.
Good.
That's already in progress, actually.
Yep. We could have that part of the package we give to DES to show them we're doing a lot of things.
Yes.
Exactly. And, because if we don't tell them, they don't know.
They won't know, right.
Does anybody have any member updates and new or other business? And I'll start with you.
Yes, I really want to get rules and procedures in place for this committee. We currently don't have any because it started out just kind of as a spontaneous need. That's something I might be able to work on if you want to come up with a draft, or you wanna come at it a different way, but I think it's necessary. Secondly, I don't know where all of these water towers and wells are, and I was wondering if maybe we could set up a tour with if they have time. And this is just a off-the-wall idea. You know, whether or not they wanna demonstrate how something is done, but at the very least, maybe just tour all of these areas that we can get to. I'd love to know where all these storage towers are and where our wells are. I know there's not too many. We took an afternoon maybe, or a morning.
So
An hour.
I have been to them all after today, because I get to go down to well number 4, because the gate was open. But what I can do is, when I'm talking to them, is find out, you know, do we need any permission to get on there? Because there's a lot of signs that say no trespassing and stuff like that. And do we need an escort? Because I know that this would take several hours and they're really busy right now. But I can definitely find out if it's something that we could do on our own and do it as like a site walk. I mean, I would like to have somebody like Scott there, because it would, but
Lizzie, just a tour, just, all right, this is Orchard Street, this is 156, this is, what was it, Long
Hill.
Long Hill.
I've been to all of them.
Treatment plant.
Yeah, be nice to get in and see inside of it.
And if it's not feasible, I understand, it's a crazy time right now. Maybe that is something, if everyone else has already seen these and know where they are, I could just maybe make that my own little tour.
Well,
Find out where they are.
I think it would be useful for people to know, so that, like, in my mind, I have a priori picture of where everything is in my mind that other people don't have, and so when you're saying it, they don't have a reference point.
No, they don't, and if we videotaped it, we could show it at our next meeting for other people in town that maybe, you know, they could visualize things too.
On the rules of procedure for the committee, could we take just a poll of whether or not you would like Dee to work on that?
Oh, yes.
So would you get like the planning boards, don't they have rules and procedures, in the town already have rules and procedures for meetings? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, very simplified version, since
Right.
we have no voting capacity, you know.
Right, we make
But-
recommendations.
I mean, anytime a formal committee is formed, it should have at least some guidelines of, and what our mission is. I know our mission has changed quite a
It
bit.
has a little bit.
But it just, I think, is a nice precursor to you know, all right, so you have this committee, what do they do? This, and
Yeah.
then just a few rules and processes and procedures, you know, to follow.
Yeah, like you said, when we started, we had a mission statement and a vote, and we were in. And, but we are gonna be doing a considerable amount of work for the town, so we should have something that, standards that we need to be held to. I mean, I think that we've been holding to the standards pretty well, just based on general, but we
Well-
should have something that people can reference.
Right, just the simple fact, okay, now we're a board of 7, and, you know, so many are appointed from the planning board, but we have so many, we want, you know, the members of the public. These are just very simple things. Trust me, I'm not looking for more work. I have enough on my plate, but it's a priority in my opinion, but it doesn't have to be shared.
Yeah, like you said, to have a mission statement and just give the public a general overview of what the obligations are, what we're looking at, or what we're hoping to accomplish would be probably the biggest thing in my mind. And like, if there's already rules established, you know, use that as a guideline. Move forward on that.
So I'm seeing affirmation all around on
Wonderful.
rules of procedure. And the water tower, let's bring it up again at the next meeting. I wanna sleep on that. I think maybe we could, almost like you said, do a video and just splice it out and, you know, show people, well, if from the high school, if you go here, this is where this tank is, and, you know,
Yeah,
stuff
even
like
that, just something to put these names of locations into a picture.
Will these
And
meetings be
visual.
posted on the calendar too, on the town website? I didn't know.
I saw the agenda, but I
yeah.
didn't look at the dot.
We're
before.
not on the calendar. I think there's still a little, shifting of responsibilities going on, so, but they did post us in the agenda part, so we were posted electronically and physically for this meeting, and we will be for the next one. Maybe by the next meeting or the one after that, we'll be able to determine if that's something that we can put on the schedule, like we're gonna meet twice a month on Wednesdays at 5 o'clock, second and fourth Wednesdays, or something like
Mhm.
that. It would be nice to have that sort of stability, I guess.
Because I really would love to
I
see
like that
citizens
idea.
come and attend these meetings. Again, time is of the essence, we're gonna be moving quickly. And my last idea is that we have a progress report with our agendas. So we have these checklists of all these things that we're gonna be working on. You're gonna come back to us, I'm sure, from other meetings. But I think it would be nice to have this checklist updated each time we post the agenda, so people can see what we've done and also keeps us on track.
Mhm.
Also, like, with our little sidewalks, I'd like to see where we have pipes in the ground. I'm sure the town must have mylars of, or at least a general overview of where.
There
What
is.
streets have.
Mhm.
That would be in Scott's office. Probably do it on a computer, show you.
Mhm.
It's kinda takes some Scott time, I think.
Yeah.
Where the hydrants are and all.
But regarding having like a running tally of our achievements, I think that's an excellent idea.
Like what you did for this.
Yeah, we just have a little box next to it so we can
Say,
check it off.
Check it off, we did that, check it.
Well,
So,
it could just be, you know, it hasn't started, it's pending, or it needs more information. It just, it's like a program manager, really, a project manager
if,
in
Access.
simple form.
Date of completion.
Yeah.
so just polling the board, does everybody feel like that's a reasonable?
Absolutely,
I
Kathy.
I think we got most of that done. I mean, we can put that together easily, because you already have the
Mhm.
list of everything we've asked the selectmen for. And then as we get reports back from Scott and different people, we know where we are, we can just make sure we have that publicly available.
So if you wanna create that, and then what I'll do is when I'm doing the agendas, I'll reach out to you and you can give me the most updated one, and then I'll attach it to the agenda.
Sounds good.
And we'll see how it goes.
I kinda commanded that spot.
Kathy, do you have anything? And I just want everybody to keep in mind that officially we've got 5 minutes left. I don't think anybody's gonna come in here and kick us out, but We should try to
I don't
keep
know
our
if this is
schedule.
something that could be for the future, or. I
Let,
could just-
let me review this
Yeah.
but let's make sure that that gets put on our next agenda.
It's
And
nice to
that'll
know
give you-
that Lamprey River Watershed is also helping keep track of the waters of the Lamprey River. Great Bay.
Chief, do you have anything?
Oh, I think it was a great meeting tonight, covered a lot of
Yeah.
ground. And, got some good handouts here, good information.
Regarding the handout, one of the things that's in here, sorry, we didn't really get to any of this, but you can read it in your own time, is this explanation of symbols and abbreviations. This is just something that I had run across when I was doing research, and this really isn't a very good one, but but what I'm picturing is that it would be great if we had like a fact card that, listed off the tanks, when they were built, how much, what their capacity is, and, something that is similar to this, that we could use as a reference, put it up online, hand it out at meetings, so that people are a little more informed about the stuff that we're doing. And, so that was just put in there to remind me to let you know that I think that we might do that, but we don't have time to really make those assignments right now. Warren, you are the new business, so we're done on that. Oh, there's that letter I was looking for. The Water Planning Committee meeting minutes of Thursday, July 27th, 2023.
Motion to accept? Or do you want to go down through it line by line?
Well, I just, should see if anybody has any changes that they want to make to it.
I don't.
I know you don't. I don't. I think that this is just another example of exactly how these are supposed to be done. Great job.
Warren, page 2, line 66, did I spell your name correctly?
You did.
Okay.
Very good.
Oh. So you're not officially a member yet, Warren, but as soon as you take the oath, your first assignment is to start working on water tower locations.
Yeah.
I know you've already got a head start over there.
Get some buck spray, get some
Yeah.
gallon compass.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of July 27th, 2023.
I'm sorry, before you do that, there were no changes. You made a motion, Chief, so do you just want a second?
I'll second that.
Oh.
Oh, no, your
You made
motion
the
is still
first.
active.
Oh, okay, so I'll motion to accept the minutes as read.
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Unless there is, does anybody have anything else? We've got 2 minutes, if anybody's got anything else that they want to get out there.
Did you get a chance to look at any of the proposed locations for water towers? Or?
No, but if you scan that to me, I'll put it in a packet, and I'll do a follow-up email to the board.
Did you find the document on it? You find the engineer document?
Oh, yeah, the GI.
They had Flint Hill as one of them. Keeble property, but I don't think that would, unless it's the backside of the Keeble property. Orchard Street, 156, and White Rock area. White Rock would be that new development on Main Street. They have a high spot. I think that's what the engineers came up with. That was in the water department. They
That
thought-
should be in the zip files that Scott provides for us,
Right.
and if it
Very
isn't,
high.
that'll be the first thing that I ask for.
Gives us some idea.
Kathy, the responsibility is now on your shoulders.
Ah, I make a motion to adjourn, right?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. There's no TV here to thank RCTV, but thank you, RCTV, because I know that you'll post this once you get it. And thanks to everybody that's watching and paying attention. And to everybody on this board, I really appreciate your help.